And good morning. I hope everyone is well this morning, or whatever time of day you're listening. It's a beautiful day. And I'm talking today about something that I think is very important for every man and woman on this planet, regardless of where you live, regardless of your ideology, religion, or whatever. The title is 2012, Debt Forgiveness is Divine Justice. And the blurb: debt is an illusion, albeit one that is deeply ingrained in modern culture. We believe we have nothing, that we are poor. We are taught that, but it's a lie. We have unlimited wealth through the power of creation. We simply forgot. Bankers have been greatly responsible for this deception, and they have taken full advantage of it. Banks have nothing to lend, and they cannot lawfully loan that which they are holding in trust for their depositors. They have not only violated that trust, they have virtually imprisoned the entire world with the deception. It's time to wake up. I talked about this a little bit in my video yesterday, and I want to reiterate again this morning that indeed banks have perpetrated on the entire world a scam in which we go to them for money, whether that is true of us as an individual or whether it is true of us as a nation. We tend to go to the bankers and say, loan us money. And I laugh because when you understand the procedure and the process of what happens, it's absolute insanity. Only those that are ignorant, and that's most of the world still, only those that are ignorant believe that banks actually have money or something of value to loan. These are the world's most illustrious and most successful con artists ever to arrive on the scene, and it's probably been going on for 10,000 years. And the entire human race has been imprisoned by the monetary system of lending money. Henry Macau, in an article that I guess came out yesterday, I just got it in one of my emails this morning, wrote an article called The Stranglehold of Credit. And he says Mark Twain identified the bankster vampires. And he says, ever since Joseph's rule in Egypt, nations have regularly evicted Jewish moneylenders in order to survive. He wrote that, Mark Twain, in 1898. And I don't know where he gets 114 years later, because it's a lot more than that. I think he forgot a digit somewhere. It's got to be a huge, much larger number. And he says Greece faces expulsion from the EU for failure to repay odious debt created out of thin air. Perhaps it's time again for the central bankers and their minions to be expelled instead. Indeed, all debt is odious debt because all debt is fraud. All of it. 100%. That which has value are natural resources and the creativity of the human population. That is valuable. In fact, as I said in the blurb, it is unlimited only by It is limited only by our imagination and our ability and willingness to create. We can create whatever we want. Now, what the money changers who Jesus chased from the temple in his day 2,000 years ago, approximately, what the money changers have done is they have created something out of nothing. And they've convinced the world that the something that they've created is the most valuable thing in the world, money. It's a fiction. It's an illusion. It's a deception. It's a fraud. This is racketeering at its best. It is conspiracy to defraud at its best. And it's time the people of the world awakened and that all debts are forgiven. Now, in the Bible, and by the way, let me just say that I am not, I know Mark Twain wrote heavily. In fact, he wrote the Bible according to Mark Twain, was one of his works. And it's interesting. He says, in that particular work, one of his quotes was, "Government is merely a servant, merely a temporary servant. It cannot be its prerogative to determine what is right and what is wrong, and decide who is a patriot and who isn't. Its function is to obey orders, not originate them." But Mark Twain was pointing fingers at Jews. And Jews have contributed greatly to civilization, just as Muslims have, and Christians have, and Hindus have, and Buddhists have. People of faith have long made good contributions to humanity. And to cite any particular group of people, like Jews, as being the culprit is very short-sighted, in my opinion, because there's no one thing that defines all Jews. However, money changers or bankers can be people of any religion, live in any country, be of any cultural heritage, or any racial orientation. It doesn't matter. The system itself of banking, of money lending, is a criminal enterprise. It is a criminal enterprise the way we have experienced it as humans for thousands of years, literally thousands of years. But in our day and age, it has reached a crescendo of cacophony, noise, that awakens even the most slumbering of souls and say, we got to do something. The derivatives market, derivatives are that which come into existence through the fraud of banking, of lending and multiplying that which, like fractional reserve banking, lending that which you don't have, and you're allowed to do it up to 10 times until the deregulation in the 90s, and then all the limits were taken off, and some mortgages that have been researched have been sold up to 200 times the same mortgage was resold and resold and resold again. I read that yesterday. Someone did the investigation on their mortgage. It had been resold, and the profits made on that mortgage, which was a negotiable instrument, that note was staggering in the millions, the amount that the banks and the banksters made on reselling that loan to other people that wanted to get something for nothing, when this whole system is created to keep man down, under the thumb, under control. And government has been involved. Multinational corporations have been involved. Crowns and religions have been involved. Everybody has gotten in on the act of this debt, credit debt scam. We live in a world that we are created equal, it is said in the Declaration of Independence. But we live in a world where that equality soon vaporizes for those that have been the prisoners, the prison wardens, if you will, of the rest of the world, seem to accumulate a greater and greater percentage through all of this fraud and racketeering, this corruption that has bought governments, bought entire nations, that has subverted the resources of people who live on the land and taken control of them, subjecting and enslaving the very people on whose land the resources come from. This is the system that we have grown up. And I started to say earlier, the Bible and the Mayan culture, both, and I believe it's probably in other civilizations and other religions, if you will, as well, had a remedy that every period of time, in the case of the Bible, it was every 50 years was a year of Jubilee, when all slaves would be set free and all debts would be forgiven. And then they could start over doing the karma thing. You know, those that take advantage of people for their own good and not for the good of the people that they're supposedly serving and claiming to serve, like the banks claim to serve us by giving us something that is already ours, that by natural right. It's ours. We have a right to everything that we want. Some people say we actually have a prepaid culture where all of our wants and needs are freely provided. But we don't know that. And if we don't know that, then it's not true for us. So we go to banks to lend money. But in the Mayan culture, every 52 years, there was a year of Jubilee. They didn't call it Jubilee necessarily, but it's the same thing that the Jewish people set up in the Bible. So the problem is not Jews or Jewish religion or Hebrew religion. That's not the problem. The problem is still money lenders, bankers, the ability of some to control many, of a few to control many for their own gain and aggrandizement. And that's what the bankers have done. They've pulled the wool over the eyes of the majority, the 99%, if you will, and they've convinced us that we need their help, that only they can set the world straight. Well, we're waking up, aren't we? Aren't we waking up? And we realize that our signature on a contract is the most valuable thing. Everything in our world, everything in commerce is based on contract. And when you get a bill, like I got a bill yesterday, or the day before yesterday, for $130,000 from the bankruptcy court in the lawsuit. The plaintiffs claiming something that they have no contract for. They have nothing that's ever been proven. They have never submitted an affidavit on the record. Not one. And they're claiming that I owe them and others owe them money. Me, $130,000 plus. It was over $130,000. I have gotten bills, for example, from the water company on the property that used to be Dr. Mary's home. I said, I'd be glad to pay it. Just show me the contract where I've agreed to pay this. They never said another word. The court sent me a bill for $600 and some during the time that I was doing the appeal. And I again said, show me the contract. We have to be intelligent enough to know that we cannot escape what's going on in our world. We cannot get out of this impoverishment and debt level if we agree that we owe it. And we think we do because we don't know who we are. And so that's why it is divine justice to forgive the debts. We have reached that point in our history where all national, international, and personal debt needs to be wiped clean. Gone. The only debt that can have any validity is where a private individual actually took from their resources and loaned it to someone else and entered into a contract with each other, and both parties signed the contract. That's not fraud. We have the right to contract with anyone else and to give of our substance to someone else so that they can benefit and expect what we've loaned to them to be given back. Now, I personally said I'm not a bank. I don't loan money. If I don't have it to give, I don't give it. But I've had people try to borrow money from me. I don't lend money. Now, I did. Do I need to say that? No, I don't need to say that. Sometimes in the short term, I may have an exchange which I had recently with one of my family members, where I used my debit card to pay something and they paid me back. That's not what I'm talking about. But in general, it's better for me just to give it. If I have it to give, I give it. And I have a feeling that even though I've lived without a lot of money for a very long time, that I'm going to be very wealthy money-wise, and I think everybody in the world is, because this whole system of debt forgiveness is going to involve leveling the playing field a bit and letting us all have a bank account with $1 million or whatever. I'm just shooting off the top of my head here. I'm not giving an actual number. But we're all millionaires. We all have unlimited potential and unlimited wealth. It doesn't just belong to a small group of people that's actually way less than 1% of the population, way less. Although it might be more than 1% of the population that's feeding off of the fraud. All governments feed off the fraud of banking. All corporations feed off the fraud of banking. The whole corporate system is in itself a fraud on behalf of the bankers. It gives limited liability, allowing people to escape full personal responsibility for their actions and holding them accountable to the public. That's all of us, for their actions. These are, oh my goodness, is it gone? Oh, I didn't realize. I just looked for the first time at the clock and it's over 18 minutes already. But I've shared these things with you today to help wake you up to understand that you don't owe anybody anything unless it's been a private loan to an individual that you agreed and they agreed. They agreed to lend you something. That's the only valid thing. If it's with an institution, a corporation, a government, a bank, anything like that, it is invalid. It's been fraud on its surface and it needs to be forgiven. Just like Iceland told the bankers, take a hike. The whole world needs to tell the bankers, take a hike. And all that the banks have stolen, which is in the quintillions of dollars, which would make everybody on the planet a multimillionaire. Everybody. They've stolen it from us. It's time to take back our birthright, to take back our heritage, and claim that which is rightfully ours. This is divine justice, and it has to operate. Our consciousness is creating it. I leave you with these thoughts, and I thank you once again for listening. Sorry I went as long as I did. Bear this stuff in mind, because it is important. It's really important to get a grasp of. Thank you for listening. Namaste.